Well, hello everyone, how are you? My name is Zac Sgro, one of the pastors at Neighborhood Church, and I want to thank you guys all for tuning in. We are on location with Jon and Courtny Aljancic. Say hi, guys.
Hello there.
Hi.
And we are doing our Neighborhood Church Neighborhood Story series after we finished up EHS and EHR. And you're going to hear a little bit from them about their journey over the last 6 to 8 months. But first, Jon and Courtny, why don't you guys introduce yourself and maybe share with our viewers who you are.
Okay.
Well, I'm Jon Aljancic. This is my wife, Courtney, and we've been going to Neighborhood Church for about a year, or a little bit over a year, pretty much right before the pandemic hit. So, but we have 3 sons: a senior, a sophomore, and a 8th grader in the Louisville school system. And this study's been really a true blessing to us.
And I have 3 boys, and I stay home, and we have been in the area for about 6 years. We grew up here, moved away to Chicago, and came back. So it's been this has been really helpul in lots of areas.
Mm-hmm.
So.
And something neat about Courtny is she's done this study. What is it? A couple of years ago?
Yeah, two plus years ago.
2+ years ago. So she's had it 2+ years ago, and then has been able to come back to it now maybe in doing it a different way, and we'll kind of hear a little bit about that. So with that, let's jump in, if you don't mind, to the first question, and maybe hear just briefly from both of you. Over the course of the last 6 to 8 months, how has EHS and EHR impacted your faith journeys?
Well, I would say for me, the study has been good in terms of like true spirituality. I think really stems from just loving people well. Mm-hmm. And throughout this study, obviously we're studying Jesus, but I think especially in this environment, this political environment and whatnot, that we get caught up in trying to be right and whatnot. And we really look at Jesus. He loved people for who they were and not for who he wanted them to be. Yeah. And I think that this has really helped me to go deeper in that, to really be fiercely present with them and not to be preoccupied with other things, and really just take time to love people. And this has been good for me.
That's a great, loving people for who they are and not who you want them to be.
Yes.
How many of us have somebody we love and want them to be a certain way?
Yes.
Yeah. What a great statement. Courtny, how about you?
I would say the premise of emotionally healthy spirituality is the whole you are really maturing as a believer, but you're not emotionally maturing, and that causes all kinds of I feel like gaps in who you are. And so I never really knew how to bridge that gap. I didn't know how to be an emotional person who also is able to be spiritually mature. I felt like my spiritual maturity was way beyond my emotions, and my emotions I'm a very emotional person anyway, so I always felt a lot of shame because I didn't know how to walk it. And so this for me has just the first time really I was in a very dark place when I did it, and it was life-saving to me, to give me words, to help me go back, to go forward, all of the things that it teaches you how to, grief and loss to me is grief and loss stinks. Well, guess what? This tells you how it makes you into a more complete and wonderful believer. And so that was just a whole mind change for me. So it's been really good.
It's as Christians, it's men should be emotional, giants, meaning they don't show them.
Yeah,
and
right.
Women are always the ones that show their emotions, and they're a little bit less mature than the men. And as I've been growing in kind of this emotional maturity over the last couple of years, I've seen you cannot separate your emotions from intellect, from knowledge, from physical maturity, from spiritual maturity. And so, have you guys ever seen the movie Inside Out? Disney Pixar.
You talked
Did we
about
talk
it.
about this?
Yeah, but we've never actually watched it. I've seen the characters,
okay,
but I've never actually watched it.
It's a movie about, and I was reminded of it as you were saying, because in the movie there are these characters in this young girl's mind, and their emotions, joy, sadness, whatever, and joy is always they're always trying to depress sadness and put at bay sadness and not allowing the child to feel sadness because they think it's everybody should be joyful at that time. And it's a brilliant film that has so many correlations. I would suggest watching it.
Okay.
So,
well, also with emotions, in the study is God created emotions, right? I mean, you look at Jesus. Jesus was angry in the temple place. He was sad when Lazarus passed away.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
And so, you kind of touched upon it, especially as a man, like a lot of society is you're not supposed to be really in touch with your emotions.
Mm-hmm.
And this study is obviously the opposite of that. And it really has brought us a depth to my, just spiritual awareness, just tapping into that and getting, exploring that iceberg.
That's good. That's good. So with that, second question is one skill from either EHS or EHR that you've really done well at implementing over the last 6 to 8 months. And it doesn't have to be one that you've purposefully went after. It's just one that you've seen work out in your life a little bit more.
Go ahead.
You go first.
You can go first.
Okay. Well, hold on a second. I gotta look up.
Oh, I'll do it then. You want me to do it?
Yeah, go ahead.
I brought it with the ladder of integrity worksheet.
Oh, yes.
Oh my gosh. I probably sent this to 15 people, even without doing it. But I've gone through EHS twice now, and then the relationship one I've never gone through. So I was really excited about doing it. And I feel like it took all those things that I learned and taught me in and I'm not like a super organized mind person, but I realize with your emotions, you need an organized mind. So this has been every single time I am upset about something, I sit down and I think through it. Yesterday, I actually journaled them all. I didn't just like put a couple little words. I sat down and really journaled something, and I found myself by the end sobbing, which I had no idea I would sob about this situation. And then I just felt like this peace, because I just felt like, God, here I am. This is exactly all of the things that I'm struggling with. And then I feel like I was able to just kind of leave it there, and I know and continue to pray about it, and God will come through for me.
Let me ask you a follow-up to that.
Yeah.
So for me, as I've done the ladder of integrity, I've seen that I don't either know what I value or even maybe why I value whatever it is that I value. Do you have that same experience?
I think for me, it's like I don't really know what my need is. I know that I feel upset about this or this relationship or this situation, but I don't know why. Like, what is that need, or what is it that I value that isn't being met? And I also like the part where it's what I'm willing to do and not willing to do, because part of my issues, I think a lot of times, is I feel like I've done this stuff now, they need to do their part. And it kind of like reprimanded me a little bit yesterday, like, you know what, I need to be willing to do some things in this. And for me, what I've learned is having the conversations doesn't always go that well. And so you don't necessarily need to have the conversations. It's more for you.
Sure.
And I feel like it allows me to give more grace, and it allows me that if the opportunity arises with this situation that I could talk, I would have an organized mind. And I feel like the emotion part is a little bit tamped down. I felt the emotions, but they're not like the leading thing. They're just part of it.
You have control of
Yes,
your emotions.
yes.
And what you said about not necessarily having to have a conversation with somebody else, that's so huge, because Matthew, I think it's Matthew 18, church discipline. You go to that person regardless of what it is, and you don't necessarily know where that person is at.
Yes, the timing.
And this helps you. You can receive forgiveness if you need forgiveness. You can discern that in your own mind, and you don't necessarily have to go to that other person, because it helps you understand. Maybe they just aren't ready to hear it right now. I wish I had that tool.
Me too. Regrets.
Oh, those tools from
lot of
EHR.
regrets.
So you're a business guy. I mean, those tools from EHR, you put them in any company in their HR department and have them as ways to work out conflict. That company would run seamlessly.
Yeah, and that was kind of along the similar lines in terms of stop mind reading and clarify your expectations. And I think that's really important, again, especially not to throw men under the bus, but again, we don't communicate the best at times. And I think, communication is the key to so many things, whether it's your marriage, whether it's been business, whether it's being a parent or whatever. And I think instead of just assuming things, really clarifying what you want and really having communication. And we kind of laughed at this because, Sgro is when, I prefer this. Right?
Oh, it's so overdone.
So we laugh about that, and we had some of those conversations.
I do that a lot. I would
half joking
prefer.
but it was good. I mean, it was good to really talk it out. And
has doing it in that kind of rigid way, has it helped even diffuse?
I think diffuse is the right word, because it's easy to take offense to anything.
Sure.
But when you're doing it in that manner, I think maybe your heart's in the right place.
Do you mind if I clarify.
Yes.
Do you mind if I read your mind?
Yeah.
She might say,
You already start laughing.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's so awkward,
I
but
think she did mention one time, I would prefer if you shut your pie hole.
You know?
But all in love,
it's a
so.
lot nicer way to say it.
That's great. Be direct, right?
So-
But
Thanks, John.
You know, I've said, we are all great fiction writers in our own minds, and I'm good at living out of those stories that I write. And
that's true.
stop mind reading and clarifying expectations is something that we can help to eliminate the false stories and save ourselves
Yeah.
tons of grief.
Yeah.
So
Which on that, I feel like to piggyback on that, I think what also is really important that I'm learning, and I should be better at it because I've been doing it for 2 years, but just the whole daily office and like being still. I have like you're quiet for 2 minutes while you're, thinking about something with the Lord or a verse, and then you're quiet at the end of the devotional, and it is so hard. But I find that when I actually sit down and set a timer and do it, I just am so much, there's the Holy Spirit works, like it's crazy. And then I sometimes leave that part out, and that's the most important part, is that whole being still with the Lord and letting the Holy Spirit do his work. So
it's interesting being quiet for 2 minutes.
it's hard.
Well, 2 minutes, just 2 minutes in life, period. It goes like that, right? I don't have enough time. But if you try to be quiet for 2 minutes, it's an eternity.
when's
Yeah.
it over?
So it's really interesting.
Yeah.
And for me, when I'm in that quiet time, I'm trying to push out 9 million thoughts.
Yeah.
And then I'm also trying to receive something from God. And I actually had this learning, it was either this week or the week before. I'm like, in my silence time, I don't need to receive anything from God. It's just me offering a time of silence, maybe as a gift back or a way to bless God, where like, I'm just going to be silent.
Yeah.
To just be silent and not think of anything is a very,
very hard.
very difficult.
Yes.
But that is a huge skill that as we move into the next series that we're starting after Easter, Fruit of the Spirit, that we are still doing the same format of incorporating that silent time and having the weekly devotionals and stuff. So it will be good. So now maybe the more vulnerable question, the third question is, what's been difficult for you to implement?
Well, Zach, I'm all about vulnerability. But you know what? We just touched upon it, and it was discovering the rhythms of the daily office and the Sabbath. And you gave me a good book from Brother Lawrence.
Oh, yeah.
As well. I forget the title.
Practicing the presence of God, or practicing His presence.
Yeah.
Yes, and that book has been wonderful, and the study's been wonderful. And so this has been, it's been a good thing because I've been doing that more.
Yeah.
I've been setting aside an intentional time to just try to be still and be quiet. But it hasn't been a strength because I just don't. It's infrequent. It's not a daily thing.
Yeah.
So really trying to continue to strive to make it a daily practice is where I struggle with. But yeah, it's just quieting your heart. I mean, like those 2 minutes of silence. Like you're good for 10 seconds, and then you're thinking about, oh, we need milk. Oh,
yeah.
And so it's just I think we get into that false. I think you had mentioned before, but like a false spirituality. Like I'm on a good path here. But you know what? We forget about that. This walk is about really experiencing Christ and really just the power in the name of Jesus Christ. And I think at times when I get frustrated with this world or whatever, like I forget that God's in control.
Yeah.
And ultimately there's power in His name. And if I am able to be more consistent in my daily offices and whatnot, I'll be able to experience and tap into that power so much more.
Maybe as you're saying that, we're doing the course with Pete Scazzaro weekly. It's been pretty cool to just hear he kind of riffs, I think, on some of the stuff. But during the daily offices, they've reminded you, and I think it's in the video way back when, I don't remember which series it was a part of, the first one and what video, but when you're in the silence, you think of a word and you say it to bring yourself back. And so you mentioned that power in the name. Maybe that's your word, just Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
And it brings you back into that silence. Yeah. So that's good. So daily office for you.
Yeah.
How about you?
Mine, I feel like it's all everything. I feel like in some ways I have high expectations for myself, and so I feel like I'm often. But the page, I think it was in the first book, but it gives you 15 descriptions of an emotionally mature Christian.
Oh, yeah.
So I have been kind of looking at that and being like, okay, where do I need to grow? And I really do need to grow in a lot of them. But I think the hard parts for me is being able to state my own beliefs and values without becoming adversarial, and adversarial, I mean, and in the return, letting people have, like, we can disagree and we can have completely different views, but we can still love the same Jesus and we can move forward in a relationship.
Absolutely.
And that is I'm realizing, like, maybe that's not, I don't know if I'm not completely developed a rule of life where I'm able to like live that out, but that's like the heart, that's especially in the culture that we're in, where if you disagree with me, I hate you.
You can't have a difference with anybody.
No, and same with, like, I think within churches, like,
Oh.
does my
Might
theology
be the worst.
Right? I mean, but does my theology have to look like yours? Does it have to look like yours? Does it have to look like the churches down the street? Well, in the past, the way I was raised is we're right. I mean, that's just we're right.
Totally.
Everyone else is wrong, and so I think that's been very hard for me to like walk that, and I think I'll be doing that for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
But just it's new for me to not be right. My theology is right. Everyone else's is wrong.
Differences are the essence of why we have conflict.
Yeah.
But conflict isn't always bad. Conflict's everywhere. It's when a disagreement occurs, and I mean, and it's not sinful inherently.
Right.
You know, I might think, you know, the best route to take to somewhere is this way. You might think it's not,
Right.
and then where it's becomes sinful is when you start to argue and then, you know, throw tantrums and not be around other people because
Right.
they don't want to make a left when you want to make a right. And obviously, deeper
Right.
than that.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I mean, as iron sharpens iron, so one man sharpens another. Like, I mean, that stems from conflict. That stems from accountability and those type of things. And so, you know, we're sharpening one another. And
Absolutely.
And, you know, there's times when we are, you know, we're sinners, and so, you know, we're going astray, and we need people to pull us back in, or really call us on that stuff. So.
I think what's hard about that though is both parties have to be willing to not enjoy conflict, but like, hey, I'm willing to fight for our relationship or our situation by going into conflict with you, hopeful that that'll clarify expectations, and then we'll be able to move forward in a more just authentic relationship.
Yeah.
But that's not always the case. So same with like churches. You get in a fight with somebody at your church and then people just leave the church, and they, you know, that whole like feeling of like, you both parties have to be okay with that.
Absolutely.
And I think it's just not it's not really very realistic if people aren't willing to work on themselves. And this is why I love this study.
Has to be this stuff is foundational.
You either already knew it from your parents or you're growing up, or you learn it as an adult. So.
And it becomes foundational because I think as you go deeper in your walk, I think the deeper you go, the more you realize I'm a sinner in need of grace, right? I mean, ultimately, like as I go deeper, man, maybe I'm not that sweet. You know,
That's it, right?
And so when you get to that point of thinking, man, I'm a sinner in need of a savior, you embrace the grace God gives you. And when you really truly embrace it, now it's much easier for you to give that grace to other people. And so
But I feel like that is what I was told my whole life, but I wasn't able to apply it. It caused so much shame in me because I would pretend to be giving grace, but inside I was not giving grace. It was very, with all that going under the surface. So I feel like your personality is such that he is much easier at giving grace. I'm more of a grudge holder. And so I feel like this is just giving me a pattern for how to do it, and like verbiage and like, I don't know. Structure.
I would agree. There's levels of grace that as we realize we don't have it all together, it's okay that we don't have it all together, but we're pursuing that. The depths of God's grace are endless. And it's, I'm just thinking lots of stuff, but I don't want to keep this any longer than it needs to be. Is there any parting thoughts that you'd like to share with our viewers or leave with our viewers?
Do you have any? I would just say I love that our church is the foundation. I feel like I can't tell you how many people I've recommended it to. It's a lot of work. It is. And you have to be willing to do the work. And so I feel like maybe people aren't willing to spend the time, but man, if you are, it reaps so many rewards that I can't. And I feel like I don't totally know how to teach it to my kids. Like I wish there was one for like teenagers, and just because I just would like I wish I had known this, you know. I'm way too old to be learning this stuff now, but I'm grateful.
I'd be farther ahead emotionally if I knew this growing up.
Yes.
Yeah. And any great relationship you have takes work. Yeah. And that's the bottom line. And you know, we're not sitting here talking about working your way to heaven, but we're talking about working on our relationship with Christ.
Work out your salvation, right? With fear and trembling. I think this is...
And this gives a great foundation and a lot of tools to do that. And when you apply those tools, you experience God in a whole different way.
Yeah.
That's it. That's a good way to end.
Yeah.
Experience God in a whole different way. So, well, as always, I want to thank you guys for taking the time to do this, and for all of you watching out there, we're going to end like we do every week, and may you go in the grace and peace and mercy of Jesus Christ. Thanks, guys.